Good afternoon, coaches, and welcome to the second of our series of webinars with Cricket South Africa. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that we're going to first have Gift Mata introducing everybody, and then we're going to go into Tumi Masekela. Throughout the presentation, Tumi's presentation, he's going to have three points where he's going to break. And during those points, you guys can ask questions and submit the questions via the Q&A or via the chat box. So let's get started with today's webinar, and I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who's going to be Gift Mata. He is the education manager, the coach education manager for Cricket South Africa. Welcome, Gift.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for setting this up as well, and good afternoon to all the coaches. It's quite commendable that most of the coaches were able to join us this afternoon. And I mean, most of the coaches could have been anywhere this afternoon. I mean, it's on the eve of a public holiday, National Heritage Day tomorrow. So I hope you guys enjoy it tomorrow. But you guys decided to join us and be a part of this webinar, and we are grateful and thankful for your commitment to your own development as coaches. I think Amani is really brief. I just want to welcome you all from CSA perspective. Thank you for being a part of this webinar once again. Just maybe to give you a bit of background with regard to this particular webinar here. As you all know that there's been different alert levels and communication that has been sent by Cricket South Africa with regard to return to training and return to play. So we thought that it is important for us to also share with you the training before the actual season can be able to start, because normally pre-season would take about 6 weeks, even for amateurs as well. As you know that the season has been, players have been inactive. There have been a lot of sports taking place this year, so most of the players will sort of come in cold this year, and we want to make sure that everybody that wants to will sort of participate in sort of any cricket activities come in with some sort of conditioning that they would have done. And our next speaker in this webinar, Tumi Masekela, will touch on those important aspects that speak to components of fitness, that speak to periodization. I mean, fitness levels for different players might be at different levels, so he's going to touch on all that stuff to make sure that everybody is on the know in terms of what they can be able to do with regard to preparing players when we eventually get back into or return into playing. So with that said, I hope you guys will enjoy what we've put together for you guys. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you very much, Gift. And we'll get immediately into talking about Tumi. So today we do have the privilege of having the Proteas new, I say new strength and conditioning coach, because even though he's been there for just under a year now, it feels like he's only been there for 3-4 months for the rest of us who, due to lockdown, we actually haven't seen as much of him. But behind the scenes, he's been working extremely hard at getting the Proteas ready. And I think we can all say by watching the IPL that the Proteas are really fit. They're really ready. They're really doing phenomenal things in the IPL already. So I'd like to welcome Tumi to come and speak today. And he's got a presentation for you all. Now, just wanted to repeat myself from earlier on. His speech is divided up into 3 sections. He'll stop at the end of each section, and he'll allow you to ask questions. If you do have any questions prior to him having his pause, his break, ask the questions, and we will, and I'll collect them all up and I'll ask them through to Tumi. If Tumi feels like he needs to actually find out a little bit more details about one of the questions, we can enable your order for you, so we can get to hear a little bit more about your question and work you through one of the answers. But I'll let you talk to Tumi now.
Thanks a lot, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well. And as Sean said, thanks for tuning in on the Wednesday eve of a public holiday tomorrow. I'm going to share my screen quickly. Hopefully everybody can see this. Is that coming up there, Sean?
That's perfect. We can see it perfectly. Thanks.
Okay, all good. All right, guys. Well, I've been asked to chat this afternoon to everyone with regards to player physical preparation. So preparing players for competition. So this, in short, it pretty much talks about periodization. How do we periodize players to peak at the right times? And in terms of periodization, all it means is long-term training plan. So what I'll go through today will be, let me say my approach. The kind of approach that I like to take towards periodization. It's a three-step approach. The three-step approach starting with competition. So with you guys working in the schooling system, the first thing that you look at is to say when are my competitions. So you target your competition phases. So then once you know your dates for competition, then you start working back to the date that you are currently, so that you have an idea of how many days do you have to prepare for competition. And at least from once you start having an idea of how many days you've got to prepare, then you can make better decisions as to what you want to do in that time. And so with that, that's the first step, finding out how much time you've got before you have competition. And then secondly, then you start analyzing. You analyze what your team did well in the last season. And from doing that analysis, you can start creating goals as to what do you want to do and what do you want to achieve in that time that you have before competition. So again, so first step, finding out how many days do you have before competition. Second step, analyzing your past season, what you did well, what you didn't do well, so that you can start creating goals as to what you want to achieve in the period before competition. And then the third step is actually planning. And that's plotting out the outcomes that you want in the different phases of your preparation period. So all of this that I'm talking about now we'll go through. I'm just kind of giving you a nice little overview of what we're gonna chat about today in terms of periodization. I know periodization is a word that you've probably heard a lot about. Sometimes it does sound very confusing, but it's actually very simple. It's just all periodization is planning. So before I get into that, because we're going to talk about physical preparation for player, I want to just briefly go through what is strength and conditioning so that you understand what strength and conditioning is. That when you do tell a player, I want you to start doing a bit of strength and conditioning, that you can actually explain to them why you're doing it and how is it going to be beneficial to them. So strength and conditioning, it's the physical meaning or technical. It's physically teaching the guys how to do, let's say, lifts, how to do a simple lift, or how to run, running technique. So that's one aspect. So it is the physical, it's the physiological. Physiological refers to energy systems. So that's how your body produces energy. Your muscles either produce energy with oxygen or without oxygen. So that's something you also, that's what we're working with in strength and conditioning. So it is the physical, the physiological, and the mental development. Mental side, or the mental development, I'm referring to the central nervous system, which is something maybe, we don't often talk about in strength and conditioning, but just to break down the central nervous system a little bit more, is that the central nervous system controls most of the body's functions and the mind. And the central nervous system, it consists of two parts. So it's the brain and the spinal cord. So now the brain is the center of our thoughts, what we think. It interprets our external environment. And that's where the origin of control over the body, over the body's movements are. So, I mean, if the brain is so important in terms of the control of body movement, it's something that we should actually, kind of focus on in terms of strength and conditioning, because strength and conditioning is all about movement and how you actually get your body to do what you need it to do. So that's what strength and conditioning is. It's the physical, physiological, and the mental development of athletes for elite sports performance. That's what it is. And when we talk about fitness, we hear the word fitness a lot in terms of fitness testing and so on. But the crux of the fitness really means the ability to do a task. So when you say somebody's fit, we're saying that, you know, they are able to do a certain task. And that's what fitness means. So why do we need general fitness? So general fitness components, I'll go through the general fitness components now. They are what form the foundation to develop specific fitness. So what I mean in that is that, like this pyramid over here, you have your movement fundamentals, and this is your mobility, balance, coordination. These are the fundamental movements that you need to be able to master or be able to do before we can start working on your strength and start working on your power and your endurance. Once we start getting into these categories, then that's where we get performance. Because strength, once you've built up good strength, with strength, you start being able to do things at speed, which is what performance is. Performance is doing an action at a high speed, which is where power comes in. And then with that, when you have the power, you need the endurance to be able to continually do these good movements at speed. And once you're able to do that, then it becomes more technical into learning how to, learning how to run, how to play cricket, how to shoot. That's more of the mental aspects where the coaches come in. So that's just giving you an idea of why we need that general fitness. Because if we do not have this base down here, then we're going to struggle when we get to this level over here, which will impede performance or the skill, impede you doing a certain skill very well. So that's why we need general fitness. So now with that, the general fitness components, the first one, that's your body composition. So body composition is, your organs, your bones, muscle in the body, that's body composition. Then flexibility is your range of motion of the person. So these are mainly the core fundamentals that we spoke about. Coordination, how does your feet move relative to your hands? Balance. Then cardiovascular endurance, which is your aerobic capacity. Then from there, muscular endurance. Then with muscular endurance, it's your strength, muscular strength. Now, muscular strength is the ability to produce a maximal force on an object. And then once you have that muscular strength, you do a movement at speed. Once you start adding speed to a movement, then we get into power. And power is the ability to exert force at high speeds. And once you're able to do that, it gives you better agility. So all of these components all tie in to what makes a person move efficiently to be able to do what they need to do. So knowing all these components, so how do we, now when I was this way, how do we use a strength and conditioning coach? This is something that as a coach, if you are fortunate enough to have a strength and conditioning or trainer at your school, these guys, they're supposed to be working together with you and alongside with you to help you and assist you to design specific programs that will address the specific needs of the individuals themselves or your team. So that's what strength and conditioners do. Sometimes we see strength and conditioners as people that, you just go on, you tell people to warm up, and then sometimes you'll tell them to, do a bit of a gym session and stuff like that. But no, that's not the case. The strength and conditioning coach is supposed to be with you, the coach, and you sit together and he helps you plot out to say, okay, this player is here at the moment. This is where he is. We want to start training him from today. In the next 10 weeks, draw out a program to say, I want this player to be here in the next 10 weeks, and how we're going to progressively build him up to get to that point. That's what the trainer should be doing with the coach. And likewise, how you're doing that with an individual, you do that with a team. So that's just what strength and conditioning coaches should do for you in your team. So if you are fortunate enough to have a trainer at the school, or you're getting in interns, this is the kind of stuff that you should be sitting down with them and writing down specific programs to address the needs of the team and the individuals. So this is the first point, or our first little pit stop. I don't know if anybody's got any questions or any thoughts. If there are, I'll just answer any questions that there are at this point in time.
So far, there are no questions that have come up so far.
Okay. I do have a habit of talking very quickly, so hopefully I am very coherent and understandable in everything that I'm saying so far. Maybe Sean, let me know if I'm going too quickly.
For me, it's all good. Coaches, if Tumi is going a bit quickly, you can also put that in the chat box if you want him to slow down or repeat a certain point or talk about something that it's gone through already.
Yeah, I have no issues with doing that. Okay, so we'll move right along. Okay, so now we've gone through, I've just gone through a bit of the lingo of what strength and conditioning is. Now we're getting into the stake of our meeting here tonight. So now, in terms of for coaching or this principle, the SAID principle, I feel this is something that as coaches we should all kind of use to kind of steer us in the right direction. So SAID principle, all it is it's specific adaptation to imposed demands. This speaks about the human body. Or the humans, we're an unbelievable, amazing beings. We are able to adapt to literally almost anything. So, humans, we have the biological plasticity, or, an ability to adapt biologically to any environment that we put ourselves into. And an adaptation, it's any variation of, or any variation that can increase one's biological fitness in a specific environment. So more simply, it is the successful interaction of a population with its environment. So saying that whatever environment that you create for your players, that's what they're going to adapt to. So what I do as a trainer is that I create the right environment for guys to progress. And that's what I need to do on a daily basis and consistently so. So again, at school level, the coaches, the environment that you guys create in terms of how you look at training and how you periodize your players, that's what they're going to adapt to. And in saying that, the programs that you put the guys under, they need to be specific, because these guys are going to adapt to whatever you're going to put them into. So specific adaptation to an imposed demand. Whatever specifically you put the guys under in terms of whether pressure, training, skills, they're going to adapt to whatever you do. So just keep that always in mind. And so how do we apply this principle? I normally look at these three questions. You answer why, the how, and what. And practically how we do that is that this is just an example. So I think as a coach, okay, so why do I want my team to start doing conditioning? My answer, why? Because my players are getting tired after the first 10 overs in the field. Okay, so that's why I want them to do conditioning. So how am I going to get them better at doing that? Aerobic endurance, make sure that they're more durable. So aerobic endurance training so that I can delay the onset of fatigue. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to enhance that. So now, what am I going to do? I'm going to make them run. So simple as that. I'm going to make them run because running, it's on your feet. Cricket, you're on your feet. So that's what we're going to do. So this kind of so whatever you do apply, or whatever you tell the guys to do. If they ask you the question, coach, why am I doing this? You'll have a direct answer for them as to why they're doing the particular thing. And once players understand and know why they're doing something in particular, the buy-in is better and the quality of what you want to do is going to be better. So now periodization. So there's different periodization models out there, but the father of all periodization models is this one. It's the classic linear periodization. Again, even if you look at this graph, don't let it intimidate. All it tells me is that, so when you're preparing a player for performance to peak at a certain time, that the general model that we use is that at the beginning of your off period, you start with relatively high volume. So the workload, so whether it's a lot of running, it'll be your volume of work, amount of work will be quite high as to how many sessions they train per week, how many balls they hit, how many balls they bowl. That volume will be its highest at the beginning, but the intensity at which the players are going to be working at will be quite low. So the volume of work is high in terms of how much work they do, but the intensity that they're doing at is quite low. And as we progressively go through, so sorry, I just forgot. So this is the volume. So your volume will be high during this time when you start with your training program, and the intensity quite low. Then as you move through the weeks in your training program, the volume, you'll start taking it lower and lower because now we're getting closer to competition time. So the volume or the amount of work you reduce, and then the intensity of the work, you're going to start increasing. So when you do that, the intensity of the work increases and the workload or the amount of work decreases, so that by the time you hit your competition phase, the players will be almost peaking at that point in time. So that's just generally, I'm just giving you an overview of, when we speak about periodization, what is it that we're talking about? So when you hear me talking about volume, I'm talking about amount of work. When I say load or intensity, I'm just talking at the intensity that the player is working at. So this is how we build our players to peak at the right times for performance. So now periodizing school cricket. So that's the big thing as to how do we work out, how do we plan, how do we do the long-term plan for our school team. So I've just been chatting to Gift and just trying to get an idea of the dates of competition. And I don't know how accurate I am at this. Hopefully you guys will correct me if I'm wrong. But so the school seasons, competitions, I believe, is in from January to mid-March, which is the school's T20, or the Cubs week is during this time, between Jan and mid-March. And then the next phase in competition would be September to November, which is your school leagues. And also the talent acceleration camps also will occur around this period as well. So these are the two competitions that as a school team you're gearing up for in the year. That's where you want your guys to peak. So now also the makeup of your team, you must bear in mind that in your team of players, you might have a few guys playing club cricket. So club cricket might be going back, or squad training sessions at club might start sometime in mid-October, with possible warm-up games as well during mid-October and November. So also bear that in mind. And then some players might have already started with one-on-one training. So now communication with each individual in your team is going to be crucial to know what are they doing at this point in time, as in like right now today, what are they doing, what have they done, or what do they plan on doing? Okay, so as I said, so we know that these are our competition times. So the way that I'm going to work it as is that we're going to start periodizing. So we know our competition phases. I'm gonna start. We'll work it as if we're starting next week. Next week is gonna be week 1 of our preparation phase. So if next week is week 1 of our preparation phase, which is the off-season phase. So in terms of periodization, we have phases, 4 phases. It's your off-season, your pre-season, your in-season, and your post-season. So these are the phases that we've got the 4 phases. So in the off-season, this is where we can do our general physical preparation time. So this is where the strength and conditioning work gets done. So we have this time from right now it's September. So from September till December, we've got this 12-week window where we can prepare our players physically to deal with our season. And I would have cut it a bit shorter, but I know that there is no school in December. And actually, so the preseason phase, I would have ideally liked to have it either 5 or 6 weeks. But knowing that schools will only open in Jan and will only be able to see your team in January, hence it makes the preseason only 4 weeks. But I only made this from September to December because this is the time that guys can do training and gym during that 12-week period. Whether we give them training sessions to do at home by themselves, or the players meet every 3 times a week at the school to do their training sessions at the school from next week Monday all the way through to December, or even if you just go from next week Monday and then into the December period, they do everything at home. And generally how I'd like to work this 12-week period, and sometimes you can break it up how you like, but the best way I've seen it works is that during this 12-week period, I break it up into a few blocks. So I'll have, we do 3 weeks of training. So the guys train 3 times a week for the first 3 weeks. And then in the 4th week, they rest. And then we go again, another 3 weeks, we work. And then in the 4th week, they rest. And then again, another 3 weeks, and the 4th week, they rest, which gives you a 12-week period. And in this period, that first 3-week period, I'll do a lot of base work, which is the running. Obviously, they spend a lot of time on their feet, so they'll do a lot of running in that first 3-week period. And then from there, I'll move them on to the strength. And the strength, then they'll do that for a 3-week period, rest in the 4th week. And then when they come back, we start again. We go through a power phase, and we'll do power training for the 3 weeks and then rest in that 4th week. So why I do this, I'll get back to the slide, is so that my program has good progression. So you remember in the beginning, I was saying that you need to analyze what your team did well in the season and what they didn't do so well in the season, so that you know what you want to achieve in this off-season period. So now, as I said, that first 3 weeks, you'll have an introduction phase, week 1, week 2, loading phase, week 3, stabilize the work, week 4, that's where the guys repair. So in this 4th week would be the ideal time to actually do your fitness testing. So normally I'd look to test the guys before they start the program to see where they are, so that at the end of the 4th week with the running, then you know whether they've improved or not. So I would do a 2K time trial next week before they start. So their first run would be a 2K time trial to get a baseline to see, okay, what are the times the guys are running? And then you give them the program. They start week 1, week 2, week 3, and in week 4. In week 4, I'm going to test again. But week 4, they have this week off, so I'll normally test on a Friday. So they have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, and then Friday, we'll test them to see what their 2K time trial is, to see whether this phase of the work that I've introduced, has it worked or has it not worked? Is the guy progressing, or is he remaining stagnant? If he's stagnant, then you can start asking questions as to why. So that's why I like breaking it up as I've explained here. So that's the first, that off-season phase. Then we move into the preseason phase, which is the 4-week period. So this is a special physical preparation period. So this is more sports specific, where we'll start with, that's the bowling, that's your batting, that's your fielding. So that's when you'll be able to start doing that again in January, starting to do, so now the goal in this preseason phase is obviously your skill that you want the guys to learn. So again, in your analysis, you'll know that, okay, maybe my batsmen need to sweep better, or they need to hit over the top better, or whatever the case may be. That's going to be your main focus in this 4-week period. And also making sure that you maintain what they've done well throughout the season. So that's what that 4-week period is about. So again, the first off season, it's all about getting the guys stronger from where they were last season. And then when we get to this preseason, it's all about now skills. What have you identified? What do you want them to get better at? And we've got a 4-week window to do that. And then we get into our in-season. So during this is our competition phase. It's either the T20 schools competition or the Cubs week. So in this phase, all you're thinking is that you want guys to perform. That's all you're really focusing on at this point in time, and making sure that guys will be doing very specific training in terms of their skills in the nets, and also maintaining general conditioning. So we'll move from a place where we have 3 training sessions a week or 3 gym sessions a week relatively. And then when we move to this phase, it's going to move down to either 2 or 1 gym session in the week to maintain. And then once we get into this competition phase, it's either we'll have 1 training session, 1 gym session in a week. So again, that amount of work, it reduces, it gets lower as the phases go, but your intensity gets a whole lot higher, because here you want the guys firing at all cylinders. And this period is between January and mid-March. And then once that competition phase is done, and that's your postseason, guys can recover. And then again, you assess how the guys have done throughout your competition phase. And then as well as the trainers, then we also assess, we test the guys again to see their 2K time trials, how they're doing, or if you're doing a push-up test or goblet squat test, strength test, to see where the guys are, whether have they been able to maintain what they've built when they were here, or has it dropped off, to see how much it's dropped off over here, or maybe guys have maintained well and they've done well and their strength is relatively the same. So then that's the first part of the season. So that's the first competition out the way. And then, so now we have the postseason 8-week rest phase. But during this phase, you want the guys to do active rest. But I do know that in schools, probably most of the other guys are playing other sports or doing some other activity at the school. So that's where, again, communication. If you have guys that are not doing any other extramural activity, engaging them as to what can they do to actively rest. So at least do a cycle, still like 1 or 2 cycles a week, or swimming or rowing or something a little bit different from, being on their feet all the time. But if the guys do love and enjoy running, you can keep them running in this active rest period. Then we move to another off season where you'll start another 12-week build-up. So starting again mid-May, and again, this probably would be your players that are not doing any other sports, where you can start another off season with them, build up the general physical preparation again, and then build up into a preseason. Then you've got another 4-week period where we do the sports-specific training, which is August. And then you're into your in-season, which is your school league between September and November. And these numbers, the weeks, as a coach, you can make it however long you feel. The only recommendation I do is that with training or with strength training, for a person to gain any specific strength gain in something, is that they need to do a specific type of training for 3 times a week and 3 weeks in a row to be able to get adaptation from it. So that's just the one recommendation that I'd make in terms of something to keep in mind when you're prepared or when you're plotting out how many weeks you have for the general physical preparation. But in terms of preseason, this you can make it longer. If you feel 4 weeks is too little, you can make it 5 or 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It doesn't really matter. It all matters as to how it suits you as the coach. But as long as you make sure that they do have their general preparation phase and also their skill specific preparation phase to be ready for their school season. And I've explained this program of progression. And again, I did mention that before each phase, I'd want to test for something specific before I started. So as I said, in the first 3-week period in my general preparation phase, which is here. So this first 4 weeks, this first period where I'm creating my base, because I'm going to be doing a lot of running. Before I start, I'll make the guys do a 2K time trial to see where they are. And then in that 4th week, in that rest week on the Friday, then I'll make them run another 2K time trial to see whether they've improved or not. Then in this first week of my strength phase, I'll do either a bench press test, or where I can do a 1-minute push-up test, or a pull-up test, and a goblet squat strength test. So it actually kind of just depends on the train and what you want to achieve for that section. But I would definitely recommend that you do one upper body strength test and one lower body strength test. So I would do here in this strength way, I'll make them do, let's say, a max 1-minute push-up test, and then make them do a goblet squat test. And once they've done that, they do that in that first week, and then I'll test again on the Friday of that rest week. And similarly with the power, I'll do a power test. Normally, if the lower extremity, I'll do a standing long jump test them there, and then test again in that 4th week at the end of that period. So that's what actually testing is for. Testing is to see whether a person is getting the gains that I want him to have for that particular period of time. So now just talking about the fitness testing, we've got a new fitness testing protocol as CSA or as the Proteas. And what we do is that we've got 2 test batteries. Not batteries as in like car batteries or battery cells, it's just a battery of tests. So this includes the key fitness indicators, namely we look at body weight, we look at skin force. So body weight, we want guys to be conscious of their weight, because the less weight you carry, the less your risk of injury. Skin folds, that tests how much fat you have. Again, the less excess weight you carry, the less risk of injury and the better performance. And then we have a 2K time trial, and that's for endurance. And we've got a goblet squat test. That is a lower body strength test. So this is a short test. We call it test battery 1. It's a test that it's not very time consuming. I can do this test on guys actually weekly. It's very quick. It gives us good results, and it gives us an idea where the player is at a specific time. And the results of this test guides us practitioners and coaches and selectors on whether a player is fit to play and eligible for selection or not. Then the second test battery that we have, it's a full test battery. And this one has a whole lot more tests, including power tests and bench press testing, and so on. And the aim is to conduct this test normally we'll do it in preseason, and the second time in January if possible. And the aim is to collect more data on the player to identify their strengths, weaknesses, and provide information to staff and player on the status of the player and how we can help him improve. So, and the big message that I want to put through is that fitness testing, its real reason is to see the status of the player and how we can help him improve. Sometimes fitness testing has been looked at a thing where, it's either a player can play or not. That's not really what it's there for. The biggest thing is that we want it to be there to actually help a player to see where he is and help him progress to where we need him to be for him to play the best cricket that he can. All right, so this is our next pit stop. I don't know if there's
There are loads of
questions out there. Oh, we've got a few questions this time.
We do have quite a few questions. Okay, so the first one actually is from a primary school coach, because now we've been talking and it's been kind of focused on the high school side. So she asked, is there anything that we can do to give their naturally talented cricketers a better chance at being able to take the cricket to a higher level?
Okay, so this is for, as you say, for primary school. It's just, I don't understand the question fully. Can you just read it again?
So is there anything we as primary schools can focus on that will give our naturally talented cricketers a better chance at being able to take the cricket to a higher possible level?
Yes, the fundamental movements. So making sure that the players are, are able, they're mobile, good balance, and then from there, once you've tested and checked that they've got good mobility, good balance, and also, having a look at their body weight, their body composition, making sure that, okay, if the guy is a little bit heavier, we're looking to get them to lose or reduce that weight in a safe manner as well. So looking at just those few components of those players at that level will already make a big difference. And then from there, that's when you start looking at the running technique, looking at the way we can start working on their strength, just even doing simple things like push-ups, air squats, getting them to start doing pull-ups. Even those small body weight exercises, being able to do the bridging, so just even working on these players with those small body weight exercises will definitely help them moving forward in the future.
Next question is from Keenan. When the cricketers have another sport in the cricket off season, what does a sports and conditioning coach do then with the set program?
Okay, so normally, what we do is that particular player will factor it in for him. So if, let's say, he does rugby or hockey, so during that off-season period, that player is playing rugby. And when they're playing rugby, he's going to be running. He's going to be doing high-intensity running. He's going to be doing covering a lot of distance. He's going to be doing some gym work with the team. So already we know that player is going to be doing a certain amount of work. So we just factor that in to say that, okay, so this guy, we know that during that phase, he's playing rugby or hockey or swimming, and that already we know that he's going to be covered in terms of certain strength gains or certain movement patterns. So the only thing is just to analyze which sport he's doing with the trainer and to see that, okay, whatever movement is not covered there in terms of your, when I talk about movements, the strength movements, I'm talking about a push, a pull, a squat, a hinge. When I mean hinge, it's a deadlift motion, or a carry moving with weight. So I'll look at if any of those movements are uncovered in that particular sport, then those are the little add-ons that you can talk to the particular player and say, okay, maybe you're not doing any pulling motion in the sport that you're in. Maybe you should think about topping up doing doing a session of 10 pull-ups 3 times a week, for example. So that's what you chat about the fitness or with your trainer. You'll talk to him about those particular things.
Okay, a question from Sibonelo.
Mm-hmm.
Do they do any personal work in between tests? What do you recommend taking into account the rest they have between one and another test?
Okay, so I just want to make sure I got that correctly. So is that, are they doing any work? I guess this is the Protea players. Are they doing any work between tests? Are you talking about school?
Between schools, between your testing and between the one test and the next.
Just read it again.
Do they do any personal work in between tests? What do you recommend taking into account the rest that they need before another test?
Okay. So again, you're saying that these are exams, as in the kids are writing tests.
From what I understand from this one here, you spoke about that they do a test, then you got your program, and then they have a week off, and then you got your test of the week. Yeah, the testing protocols.
My gosh, sorry, I've had a bit of a blonde moment there. So you're saying the rest between tests, right? So the test will be pretty much almost 4 weeks apart, because then I test that first week that we start a particular block, because I just want to clarify. So each block is 4 weeks. So it's 4 weeks each block. So that first week I'll do a test, and the guys will have training. They train 3 times a week for 3 weeks in a row. And then in that fourth week, they'll rest they'll rest Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then in that on the Friday, then I test them again. So the spacing in between tests is about roughly close to 4 week interval between tests. And that rest period, that's what helps them to adapt, because whatever stimulus that you introduce to the players, you need to allow them time to adapt to that stimulus, which is why we have that 4th week restoration phase.
Okay, Tebogo asks, some of us are working in the disadvantaged areas, as in hubs, where we don't have access to a gym. What exercises can we do to help build the player's strength?
Okay, again, body weight exercises. Let me just check quickly. Just tell me if you can see the screen by any chance. Has my screen changed?
Yes, it has changed.
Okay, so in terms of strength training, it's all you can do. Just start guys doing on body weight exercises. And I mean these, you've got a burpee, guys, single leg hip raises, a push-up, bridging, air squats. These are all exercises. They don't require any equipment, and you can help guys just by doing these exercises and putting time to it. That could help make the exercises a little bit more difficult. You can vary it in different ways to make it more challenging, but even in that area, we can get work done, and guys will get significant strength gains in the lower body from doing burpees, from doing single leg hip raises. They'll get good glute strength. Upper body with the push-ups, they'll get good upper body strength, and doing bridging for protecting that core, and air squats will definitely get them stronger in the legs. So that's something that we can use when you don't have any equipment available. So definitely, these are certain exercises that you can use. Okay. And again, 3 times a week. So yeah.
Okay. I've also done some work recently with Gymnastics South Africa, and there's a lot of work that you can do with the skipping rope too.
Yeah. No, definitely. For skipping rope, that's plyo, and also with a good cardio element. So that is very, very good work. Lower body strength, lower body power for the athletes.
Okay, so here's the next question. I think this is going to take a little while to answer. This one is actually quite a good question.
Okay.
Long-term athlete development is the coaching directive of Cricket South Africa.
Yeah.
How does this tie in with the periodization at model you are presenting, at the model that you're presenting? Is this applicable for all ages or mainly for older, more developed children?
I think this, as you say, the LTAD, I see it's been rolled out to everyone, definitely. And the model, like as I said, the periodization plan and model that I showed you, that's like the base model that they've taken from in terms of long-term development for athletes. And I think you can apply it for different ages. But again, as I say, like you apply it specifically for your age group, which is why I really stress specific adaptation to impose demands, which is going to be very applicable to your group of players. So where you have obviously the long-term development plan for 12-year-olds is going to be very, very different to the one for under 19s or guys at professional level. So it's just for you to, where you are at the level you are, to make the best decisions in terms of how you periodize your players at that level. I hope that does answer the question a little bit.
I think so. I definitely think so. The next question goes back to primary school. With primary school level kids that show natural ability as fast bowlers, what would you recommend as the amount of workload that they go through compared to the resting period? And also, how should the coach approach coaching them for fast bowling, as in intensity-wise?
Intensity, okay, that is something that I'm going to talk about that, I think, actually in the next piece. Is chatting about how we monitor workloads with our fast bowlers. I think that's something that it's a very good topic as to how do we manage and monitor our fast bowlers. But still, the process of thinking remains the same in terms of you starting the guys with a bit of volume, or we build up the guys' volume of work. And actually, no, I'll explain it in the next. It'll make more sense once I've gone through some of the stuff that I'm going to go through in the next piece. But that's a great question. Just maybe if I don't answer it, just remind me to get back to it. But I think the next piece will answer that question.
Great. So that's the last question for the moment. We can go into the next piece.
Okay, thank you. So especially, I'm so glad you asked that question. So in terms of fast bowlers, so there's clear evidence of relationship with high workload and injury, and we know that. But the real problem seems to be the inappropriate training loading for these guys. So an excessive and rapid increase in workloads are likely responsible for the large proportion of injuries. I don't know if you guys might have heard of the word like workload spikes. So what that basically means that if guys move from doing almost zero to nothing work, and then in the first week, you come in and you make them now, like for instance, as an example, bowler comes in, he hasn't bowled any deliveries for the past 6 weeks, and then he comes in this week and you make him bowl 200 bowls in the first week, then definitely his chance of getting injury is almost, it's very, very high. So that's a workload spike. And I'll just talk to you guys as to how you should approach working with a fast bowler as a coach. I'll go through that now. But also now keep in mind that that physically demanding training, progressed appropriately, will develop physical qualities which will protect against injury. So in terms of bowling, the way to get stronger from, in bowling is to actually bowl. So again, specific adaptation to impose demand. So when a bowler bowls, every time they bowl, their body is adapting to that bowling action, and it's getting stronger to be able to handle that bowling action load repeatedly. So the more bowling, or the more bowling that a bowler does, the stronger he becomes in doing that bowling action. So again, that's specific adaptation to impose demands. But now just appropriate loading to get them to hit the big loading targets that you need them to hit. That's the trick, and that's the approach that I think that question is referring to. So now bowling workload. I'm going to talk about, I'm just going through a bit of the lingo that we normally talk about when we talk about low bowlers. So we have the acute workload. So the acute workload is the number of balls bowled in 1 week. That's the acute workload. And then the chronic workload, that's the average number of balls bowled over a 3-week period. So just to give an example of that. So this is data that we take from the South African fast bowlers, but this is just an example at the moment. The system that I'm referring to is the Cricket Clinic system. So this, what I'm going to show you now is the acute chronic workload ratio. And this is a ratio that we use to kind of monitor our bowlers, which gives us our approach. So as we said, acute workload, that's the bowling load or the number of deliveries bowled in 1 week. So normally the acute workload week, we work it, and it's the 3rd week. The 3rd week will always be, that's your acute bowling workload week. And as we said, the chronic workload, that's the amount of balls, that's the average of balls you've bowled per week. So the chronic workload would be amount of balls bowled in week 1 plus week 2 plus week 3, and we divide it by 3. So as we see here, that's 80, 120, 100. That's 300 balls bowled in 3 weeks. Divide 300 balls by 3 weeks. That gives you an average of 100 balls a week. So what this shows me, or what this tells me, the chronic workload tells me that now this bowler, over this past 3 weeks, he is ready. So after a 3-week period, this bowler is ready to bowl 100 balls a week. He's fit to bowl 100 balls a week. That's how I'll determine the fitness of the bowler. And so now then when we spoke, I said the acute chronic workload ratio. So what the ratio is we say we take the chronic, the acute workload. So the acute workload, which is 100 balls, we put it there. And the average, which is the chronic workload, which is also 100, we put it here. So then we divide it. 100 divided by 100 gives me acute chronic workload ratio of 1. And this workload ratio of 1 is relatively safe. Okay, so now let me show you a different scenario where, again, so chronic workload, so in the 1st week, bowls 80 balls. 2nd week, bowls 120 balls. 3rd week, bowls 250 balls. So again, the acute workload week. So in the acute workload week, he bowled 250 balls this week. Now, what the chronic workload tells me, so over this 3-week period, how many balls did he bowl? He's bowled 80, so he's bowled 200, he's bowled 450 balls in a space of 3 weeks. So I divide that by 3, and that gives me an average of 150 balls a week. That's what he's ready for. So actually, the chronic workload tells me the bowling fitness, what the bowler is ready to bowl. So the bowler was ready to bowl 150 deliveries, but in that 3rd acute workload week, he's bowled 250 deliveries. So he's bowled 100 more deliveries than what he's ready for. So he's bowled 100 more deliveries than what he was ready for. He was ready for 150, but he bowled 250. Now, when we work out that ratio, the acute workload, which is 250 over here, and the chronic workload here at 150, 250 divided by 150 gives me a ratio of 1.7. So now with all the data that we've been gathering over the years through with our fast bowlers, we've seen that a ratio of more than 1.5 when a guys have a ratio of 1.5, they're at a very high risk of injury. When guys have a ratio of less of 1.3 or less, they're at a less risk of injury. So again, even when I have a look at this, so again, the current acute week, which is the third week, it tells me the fatigue level of that particular week. And the chronic is the rolling average over the 3-week period. It tells me the fitness, what the bowler is ready or can do. So when that acute load was similar or lower to the chronic workload, the likelihood of injury for fast bowlers in the next 7-day period was approximately 4%. So even if that bowler does that, and he bowls, even though that bowler has bowled 250 balls this week, it doesn't mean he's going to develop an injury there in that week. It's over the next 7-day period that he's at a high risk of injury, that way he's more likely to get a niggle or something's going to happen. So even if, let's say, something like this happens, the way that you manage that bowler over the next 7 days is going to be crucial, because if you do not manage him well, he will get an injury. So again, so that's what the stats are telling us. And however, so now when that workload ratio was at 1.5, which we just checked now, or what it's greater than 1.5. In our case, it was 1.7 or so. As I say here, the issue was it was 1.7. So the bowler is at higher risk. He's at a risk 2 to 4 times greater risk of injury in the next 7 days. So the optimal ratio that you want to keep your fast bowlers at is between 0.8 and 1.3. And I've just shown us how we work out the ratio. So as a coach, you must start giving the guys and guiding your bowlers as to how many balls you want them to bowl per week. Now the question would be, okay, how many balls do I know, or how many deliveries do I know, or how do I work out the number of deliveries I want my bowlers to bowl per week? And simply to answer that question is for you analyzing to say, okay, how many games do we play per week as a school? Whether, let's say, for instance, you play 2 games a week and it's 250 over games, for instance. So my bowlers would be bowling 20 overs a week, roughly. That's what I need to train them to be able to do safely, to be able to bowl 20 overs per week. So now it's going to be crucial how we build up this load to get there. It's again in that once we're in that preseason phase, is starting them quite at low loads. Let's say starting them bowling, let's say even 60 balls a week, or even, can start at 60 balls a week, and you break it up into a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. The research has also shown us that players that take less than 1 day's rest in between bowling bouts. So guys that don't rest in between bowling days, they're the ones that are at a high risk for injury. So it is quite nice to try and cushion your bowlers and give them a rest day in between their bowling sessions. Hence, bowl them on a Monday, on a Wednesday, and on a Friday. Then they get that rest period on a Tuesday and on a Thursday. And there you can even, as you say, you can go 20 balls per week, per training session. And then you progressively start building up that load progressively over the next 4 weeks. So again, you can start with 60 balls the first week, and then move it on to 80 or 90 balls the second week. And then as you do that, you just keep referring to your acute chronic workload ratio to make sure that how many balls that you want them to bowl a week, you don't exceed that 1.3 ratio. So that's how you can plan out your fast bowlers into tournament or into competition. And that's bowling. I don't know if hopefully that did answer the last question that I got.
Uh,
on
Thanks,
the last
Tumi.
piece?
We've got some additional questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, does the workload ratio include match day stats, or is this preseason related?
This is preseason related as it stands now. But when you move into your in-season, then you start factoring in your games. So you'll know that if I play 2 games in a week in my competition phase, then already that bowler, his 20 overs already are in for the week. So in terms of at your training sessions, that's where you got to start being clever as to, now that's when you're talking about how you manage the intensity. So instead of letting them bowl flat out at the training sessions, you can either get them to just do skill work, top up their skill work, make sure that everything is working at a low intensity. Either they're doing walking, just working on their technique, just walking run-throughs, or even just bowling from 2 steps or half a run-up, maybe just one over at half a run-up pace. And then that's them for the training sessions. They don't, because they're going to get the other bulk of the work done in the game for you anyway. And also, if you rest them well, that's where you're going to be able to get a whole lot more out of your fast bowlers. They'll be well rested. They'll be able to give you good energy in the games as well.
With schools generally doing multiple different sports, how can we better manage their workloads in general to prevent injury and to avoid burnout, and be able to maximize on performance in competition phases?
Okay, so now that's the big thing there is going to be communication. So communication with yourself and the player. So if, again, he's playing cricket, he's playing rugby, he's playing hockey, and so on, it's just having that understanding to say, okay, so when he's doing rugby, his strength work is covered. He's playing hockey, his running work is covered. So I don't need to bombard that same guy with the same program that the other players that are not doing any sports are doing. So what I just need from him is that, okay, what is his particular skill? If it's bowling or if it's batting, whatever the case may be, just chatting to him to say, okay, so how is your week looking at the moment during those other activity weeks, and see where you can slot in a skill session for him to start doing either his underarm hitting or do his technical bowling work. And just then for him, he just focuses on those small things once or twice a week so that you don't overly stress him out or bombard him so that for burnout to occur. So it's all about communication with the athlete, and letting him, and giving him the best opportunity to be able to do his other sports, knowing that your basic work is covered in terms of conditioning. And then it's just all about where do I top him up in his skills. And then you can become creative with, I can't say exactly what you will be able to do, but I'm sure, you can work out different ideas and stuff with the player and the other coaches.
Are there any more questions? Does anybody have anything else to ask to me? Just one thing is that I have been asked if I will have a replay for this webinar, and we will allow coaches to re-watch the webinar and pick up some more tips and hints from the presentation. I mean, there was a lot of detail in it, and it's it's something. No, it's perfect. It's something that you can reprocess and look at again, and also include some also self-study from some of the pointers if you need to. So. Are there any more questions from anybody?
Yeah, I tried to get in as much information as I could and compress it.
Sibusiso asked if we could share the presentation as well. Would the presentation still be available for the guys?
Yeah, if you want, I could either send you the presentation or gift or...
You can send it straight to me, and I will send it out in an email together with a replay of the webinar.
Okay, I'll send you the presentation. No problems at all.
Great. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic. There is another question. Great.
Okay.
How do you balance skill work and mentoring and monitoring of deliveries in a week?
Okay, so how do you balance skill work monitoring deliveries in a week. So I think probably this might, it might be referring to, in terms of drill work, hopefully I'm correct, you're pertaining to drill work and actually like deliveries bowled at high intensity. I would say the drill work that you make the guys do, which is just like standing deliveries, that's something that actually it's very good. I feel it's very good for the players to do. I'd maybe cap that off at, let's say, doing 30 balls of, if they're just going to do like a technical session, they can go up to 60 deliveries in a session for tech work, just going through the action in one session. But if they're thinking of doing any bowling from half a run-up or full run-up, then you'd encourage a lot less drill work. So maybe do three overs of drills and then 2 overs of a half run-up, for instance. Then you start breaking it up like that. And then the balls that you log as practice balls would be the 2 overs from a half a run-up. And the reason why I do that is because in the bowling action, it's a power activity. And again, somebody referred to burnout, is that doing that power activity, repeatedly doing it and not giving the guys enough rest to recover from it every time, that's what creates burnout. Because bowling it's quite stressful to the central nervous system. So again, when a bowler is doing bowling, how you build up that load, hence why it is so important to monitor the amount of deliveries you'll start bowling from half a run-up, which will be more the explosive actions. So once he starts going from half a run-up, then you start loading those balls as practice deliveries that you will start using for your acute chronic workload ratio. And then, but the other drills work, those ones you don't have to, I wouldn't count those as practice deliveries, but just also monitor them to see that they don't do too much. Again, too much would be maybe if a guy is bowling 90 to 120 technical balls in a day. But for a fast bowler, then that's excessive. For spinners, on the other hand, it's a norm. That's one thing that I've seen with spinners. For spinners, even if they're bowling off a full run-up, they normally bowl about 120 balls per session, and they're fine. But you can never do that with a fast bowler. So for spinners, that's okay. But for a fast bowler, we're definitely looking to, at least if you cap it off at 60, not more than 60. And if they're doing a day of 60 drill balls, they must not bowl off a half runner. Hopefully that does give you an idea.
I think that also answers the question we have here about the workload ratio applying to spin bowlers as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now for spin bowlers, it will work very differently. But the nice thing is that it does, the way I use that acute chronic workload ratio with spinners is that I see that once they start bowling less than that, because it gets to a point where they'll bowl, let's say, 120 balls consistently, and then that acute chronic workload ratio becomes a 1-to-1, which is a norm for them. So once they start doing less, then that's where I'll start getting worried as to, okay, are they honing their skill? Because, spinning takes a whole lot. You need to keep bowling as a spinner to be able to repeatedly, bowl consistently in the same spot. But once, if they're for bowling more, for them, I'd say if it gets to over 300 deliveries regularly, then that's where maybe I'll start looking and saying, okay, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And also, I think it's also a thing of communicating with your bowlers as well. Just getting a sense and a feel to, okay, how do they feel after bowling that amount of balls in that week? And then, because some of the guys are going to have different, I have come across some bowlers, like Malusi Siboto. He's one bowler. He bowls about 200 balls a week, but he's a fast bowler. And for him, that's a norm. But he's built up that resistance over a number of years. So I couldn't just come in and say, no. I need you bowling less balls a week, that type of thing. So also, that communication with your players. But at school level, I know it's a different story. You can actually tell the guys that, no, I need you bowling X amount of balls, unless maybe, I don't know which scenario you'll get a school guy that is bowling that amount of balls and he's okay. I don't know, maybe you might get one, but as long as you can keep track of what they're doing. And again, keeping track of what they're doing at club cricket. I think that's another thing that I forgot to mention, that some of our guys are playing club cricket. So just understanding the amount of balls they'll bowl at a training session at club cricket. And if they're playing club cricket games in the weekend, also logging those in. And then and it's fine. If they're bowling those balls at club cricket training, they don't need to do the same stuff, or they don't need to bowl at your training session. So just understanding that. And also, I know hopefully at club cricket, it is a structure that hopefully will, also look to make better. And hopefully there is a coach that is also aware how many balls they'll be bowling at school and so on. So it's all about communication at the end of the day, communicating with the player and if possibly their club coach, if need be.
Well, and this is the last question. So during your competition phase, do you keep your ratios close to 1, especially provincial boys playing and training within the school setup as opposed to provincial training?
Okay, so I'm just trying to see if I understand that correctly. So they say, do I try and keep the ratio close to 1-to-1 for provincial players?
Mm.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Boys playing and training within the school setup as opposed to provincial training.
Oh, okay. So this is players playing provincial cricket within the school setup.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's what I will also try and push. It's make sure that I understand and know what the player is doing at school level. And then once I know that number, then I can start, either I'll see whether I need to progress it or do I need to keep it the same. So the thing is, again, from school cricket, you might be playing 250 over games a week, and then which is 20 overs that you bowl in a week. And then all of a sudden you move to provincial level cricket where you're playing over 4 days. And in a 3-day game, there, you bowl as your captain requires you to bowl. So you might bowl up to maybe 40 overs in a space of 4 days. So that jump from school level cricket to provincial cricket, that's where I need to be monitor and say that, okay, get coach to understand that this guy is ready to bowl 200 balls a week, 20 overs a week. So how we can't just get him into the system, get him into the game. And in his first class game, he's bowled 15 overs in 1 day. Already there, that's a recipe for disaster. So I'll also try and make sure that we look out for those things. And again, that's why the more information or the better information we have at school level, then we'll be able to prevent these kind of injuries from happening, from having that big jump.
I think where it comes in quite difficult for a lot of these coaches is that you've got a provincial player, let's say not even for senior provincial. So you've got a player that's playing in your team. They'll play 1 or 2 games for the school in a week. Then they've got a game for their provincial side, getting ready for, let's say, the Kamajula week. And then they've got a club game. And then suddenly now you've got 4 or 5 games and the kids are still at school and they'll have 40, 50 overs in a week.
Yeah. So the thing is, especially if as a coach, we know that the player is going to go through that, then that periodization plan becomes very crucial into, starting to plot out as to how do I progress this bowler to be able to bowl 40 overs a week. And that'll be a process that will take you about 8 weeks, where you need to start that particular guy bowling 8 weeks before his first game hits, so that by the time that 8-week period is done, you've kind of started getting him to bowl about 30 to 40 overs in a week in a controlled environment where you can actually control that, okay, today you're bowling 10 overs in the day, or you're bowling 5 overs in the day, and so on. Because you need to regulate that, again, paying attention to your acute chronic workload ratio, because you can build that up and get him to a place where he can bowl 30 to 40 overs a week quite comfortably. So that is, again, the communication.
Great. Thank you so much. Gift, would you like a last word before we leave?
Yeah, thanks, Sean, and thanks to Tumi for that informative session. And hopefully, coaches were able to take a lot of value out of your session. And I think when you speak about fast bowling, I think it is a subject that is close to many people's hearts, because obviously, fast bowling as an activity is quite a strenuous activity for a lot of youngsters, especially for a lot of growing bodies. A lot of kids, especially at high school, go through a lot of growth spurts and those kind of things. So what Tumi is talking about with regard to communication, I think that is really critical for us to be able to make sure that we monitor the players' workloads and make sure that we're not putting them in situations where their body starts to sort of give in because of the amount of workloads that they sort of carry. So that is important. And from our side as well, from coaching perspective, I think we'll also speak of safe actions, make sure that the actions are safe. We can be able to assess whether somebody has a safe actions or somebody has a mixed action, then it becomes a bit of an issue. So physical preparation, technique with regard to bowling, and workload management. Those are critical things that we look at for, especially for young up and coming young fast bowlers. So and it's the coaches that are working out there with the young fast bowlers need to be our eyes out there and look after these players. So we're hoping you guys were able to take a lot of value out of this and sort of apply those concepts when you guys are out there in the field.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tumi. And also, it's great to see that somebody in the Proteas setup is still looking back at the school level at where the players are coming from, and it's phenomenal to see somebody giving back from even though you're up at the Proteas level, you still got time for the school coaches. And I think everybody, and I see comments, people thanking you and congratulating you for what you've done already, and wishing you the best for your preparation work with the Proteas.
Thank you very much, Sean. No, it's not a problem at all. Well, again, as you say, the goal is for, God willing, in the future, I'll be working with most of the youngsters that you guys are working with in the schools at the moment. So, the more we actually need to invest more at those levels to make sure that we the product that we get, our end product, is a whole lot better, and that's something that I'll always have time for.
So just maybe a last word, if you don't mind, from my side. I've just forgot something. So in Tumi's presentation, just with regard to return to play, guys, we've communicated from a CSA office with regard to up to alert level 2. So the information with regard to alert level 1 in terms of timelines, what is permissible with regard to alert level 1, we're going to communicate that in due course to you guys. So be on the lookout. So that information will come through your member offices, through the compliance officers in that office, or the provincial coaching managers in that office. So be on the lookout of that information.